You would think after a 2-2 draw at Old Trafford with Sevilla, where they were 2-0 up in the Europa League, I would have plenty of things to say about Manchester United and, well, where they're going in the future. Well, bad things at least. But the weird thing is, every one of my takes in this video seems to be at least semi-positive or alluding to United being good. And I actually think we should be more worried about these kind of results than anything else, because Manchester United are clearly back in some sort of groove. And I think it's interesting, the result this evening, but I'm going to unpack a little bit of that in the overall video, but also in the the build up to the next game as well. So welcome back to Laurence McKenna channel. It's good to have you guys. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, it's right down there. And if you aren't convinced already, hit it at the end of the video. You don't even have to touch it now. Manchester United went 2-0 up in what seemed like another Europa League game. It's just another Europa League game. Now, Manchester United fans, I'm going to ask you, because I kind of want to hit this one early, right? You two centre-backs went out. You got a silly card in there that means that Bruno Fernandes misses the next game. You're rotating quite heavily from subs during the actual game. And it's now 2-2, which means that it's clearly not the result you went into the game with. You can't just sit back in the next game and kind of expect a decent result to come out of it. It's going to be competitive. Not necessarily because Manchester United were terrible, but because Sevilla sort of fought their way back into it. Now tell me, at this point in the season, is the real goal anywhere within the Europa League for Manchester United? Like, do Manchester United really want to be in the Europa League at any point, at any time, in any point in their history? Even during the Jose Mourinho times, even in the times where it did have a little bit of nostalgia around it, that's a little bit different. But the Jose Mourinho times, what purpose was it serving apart from maybe proving some sort of small things about Mourinho? We know the things that the Europa League proved about Mourinho, but the things that the Europa League would prove about Erik ten Hag, we already know anyway. I'm already worried about the increase in ability and on-the-ball tactics and ideas and all the things that like someone like Erik ten Hag is so good at increasing at any one of the clubs that he will probably go to, that I don't need to see it in the Europa League. Concentrate on getting Champions League for next season. Now, they're in a strong position for that as well, right? So, one game in hand, 3 points ahead of the team who's chasing them anyway, probably well out of sight the rest of the teams in that league. Probably going to finish in fourth, maybe got a little bit of third in them, but either way, is there really that much difference? Maybe prize money at some point, like something like that. But the reality here is that Manchester United are really gunning for next season. So why get embroiled in some kind of battle that they now find themselves in the Europa League? Well, because Sevilla are particularly good, they've kind of done this throughout the Europa League this season, and they're the kind of side that you just don't want to draw in the Europa League. Do you know why? Because they kind of Europa League royalty at this point. Like, they're like a specialist team with this. Hey, we're not quite good enough for the very good, but we're good enough for the middle goods. Let's get on to some of the good stuff about Manchester United, though. Sabitzer early on. Now, if you are a manager early on in your tenure, I'll tell you why Sabitzer is a good player. Comes in from an institution where winning is pretty much the norm, if not expected as the norm, and so anything below that is considered to be failure. He is from a Central European country, Austria, where people don't necessarily associate it with any kind of, how can I put this, like stereotypes about that country in terms of football. So you've got the chance to kind of give him this footballing identity. And finally, you can give your team little tricks and little things they can do to exploit the opposition to prove that your team are technically capable of scoring goals within a game, even if sometimes the system doesn't particularly look like it's playing in the way that you want it to. And that's exactly what Erik ten Hag did tonight. In fact, he did it to such a degree, even with rotating players like Sancho and Martial and other players in, that you kind of go, hey, there is a system here that Manchester United can repeat, and the players clearly believe in whatever methods it is that Erik ten Hag is employing. Whether those methods are overarching macro ideas of like, hey, we've got like a big thing that we can achieve here through these tactics, or small details in every game that players are clearly paying attention to that is important to Erik ten Hag, and that Erik ten Hag will often exploit, which is why he gets into great tactical battles with opposition managers. And on top of that, just little results where the top players at any club see someone like Sabitzer scoring and they go, well, if I go there, what can I achieve? Not only that, but the midfield is changing shape all the time for Manchester United. They get Casemiro back, things looking way more solid. They lose two centre-backs in this game. Another one of those questions around, do you really want to be playing Europa League? Are you more interested in keeping someone fit rather than going through in the Europa League? And if you do go out, was it worth losing those two players to fitness? Probably not. On top of that, we should talk a little bit about Martial. Coming back into the team now, he's been injured for a little while, or he's been out of the team at least. And there was always this kind of, hey, we need to sell him sort of thing. But I'm wondering, is there a slightly deeper role for Anthony Martial in this game? Is there in just Manchester United's play in general? Because when Sabitzer was doing that, like, he was playing further forward than Martial, and the tactical brilliance of Martial, like the thing that maybe we didn't think he had when he came to Manchester United. He seemed to be more of a finisher, come striker, come, maybe even looking forward to being a complete 9 up front. He's very complete in that sense. Like, he's one of those players who can play off a 10, behind a 9. Like, he could be a provider if Manchester United need that said provider. And also, if they can't find a suitable buyer this summer, maybe someone like a Sevilla. On top of that, Anthony Martial is the kind of player that clearly has a good approach to the game. He's not the kind of player to cower away from a challenge. He's not the kind of player to cower away from just being a challenge within the squad in general. And he's clearly the kind of guy that you want in your side because he aspires to big things. I appreciate that about a player. And he's the kind of player that, frankly, you want if you're Erik ten Hag at this point. The kind of mid-level but not completely top-tier players that could possibly transition to have a higher ceiling, but at this point don't. And now we get on to Jadon Sancho, someone who we've been talking about for quite some time. And maybe we can even talk maybe in vast swathes about Manchester United wingers / wide players in general at the moment. Rashford has seemingly dropped off more recently. People are 50% impressed with Anthony, but at the same time sort of like, what have we spent our money on? Could we have got better value elsewhere? As brilliant as some of his moments are. And I get it. Like, if Erik ten Hag wants you, then you come in and you are that player. Like, he's clearly doing what Erik ten Hag wants. He gets plenty of game time. I trust that. If I'm a Manchester United fan, I trust it even if I'm not a Manchester United fan. But I'm wondering at this point whether someone like Sancho is better suited to another system, another place within at least the Premier League, or possibly just within Europe in general. The guy doesn't seem particularly confident in his ability right now, doesn't seem particularly weirdly engaged with the game sometimes. And as much as I like to see him kind of, I'm not saying that's disinterest necessarily, but just like whether he's not able to get his head into the game. And even because I like the way that he celebrates. It's like he's overjoyed for the rest of the team and the players around him. But I'm sometimes looking at him and thinking, are you really kind of head in the game, Sancho, here? Or are you just like going to float in and out because maybe early on in your career you were able to turn it on and off? Maybe you've had a more difficult time recently. Maybe there's been some real challenges that we should be more mindful of. But are you able to achieve the very top of the top, which is what Manchester United are going to, I think they're probably going to demand of you in the very near future. Because if you don't provide that, maybe you're not going to be able to provide what Erik ten Hag wants. Later on, Elanga came on, also quite isolated, possibly leading me to a little conclusion that Manchester United wingers were going to be more isolated in this game because that's the way Sevilla play. They're going to try and get on top of those guys and, nullify them. And that's why they went through the middle with Sabitzer a lot more and clearly exploited that space. Possibly something to think about if you're a Manchester United fan, criticising Sancho this evening, or even anyone else who played in that position, especially with Elanga kind of, coming on and not also doing something particularly special. Now, let's put some smart things into place here with Manchester United. We know that Manchester United are not going to be winning the Premier League this season. We know that in the near future, there will be a mass improvement through A, squad investment, B, a bit of an exodus of some other players who've probably got a bit of a hangover from previous eras, and C, just Erik ten Hag getting pre-season time with any of these guys. Like, there is plenty of time for Erik ten Hag to continue that upward motion. It's not like he's just gone and gone, all my tactics now work, so we'll just continue to stay here. It's clearly a process at Manchester United. It's something to be mindful of. And as much as they gave away both own goals, by the way, both ridiculous own goals to score as well. Like the Harry Maguire one, you almost feel sorry for him at this point. It's so comical. He's trying to leave the end of his Manchester United career, at least with some semblance of like self-image. But let's face it, like, he's leaving Manchester United. He's probably going to go to another reasonable team, but not someone of Manchester United level. There is a bit of a worry for something like his mental health. You kind of just want to see him achieve just because I kind of like the guy. Even if it was funny to laugh before and all the bad things that happened to him, it's not anymore. So they should have put the game away, and they didn't because of two silly own goals. The Own goals also come, by the way, because you're not controlling the game. They were making substitutions, which meant they had less control in the game. Not only that, but they also took off two centre-backs. Centre-backs so key to controlling matches in the modern day. It worries me a little bit in the next game, whether if they don't have those guys back, will they get exploited by someone like a Sevilla? Did Sevilla even really create enough in this game for us to be worried about them exploiting Manchester United? They're taking Manchester United back home in the next game. You know, there are variables here, shall I put it that way? But I don't know if they're variables that worry me if I'm Erik ten Hag to such a degree. The only worry is now we're playing one extra game with quite high intensity rather than going away and getting like a, hey, we're 2-0 up, sit back, let's try this, let's try that. So I'm interested in know what you guys think. Where do Manchester United take it from here? Do they get to a degree where it's like, Sevilla are sort of coming at us here and we're in trouble because we have Martial up front and we have Maguire at the back? Or is this going to be one of those games where Manchester United dig in and it's a bit of a turning point for someone like United? I remember this as a Liverpool fan when Klopp first came in. I was present at Anfield for the comeback against Dortmund in the first season. Manchester United fans might not remember that. Big for Liverpool. They then had a big comeback against Villarreal. You're going to have these kind of weird little blowout moments where you don't control games, where you look comfortable one minute and you don't the next because of tactics. And realistically, it's because this is a transition process for Manchester United. Now, you might be watching as an opposition fan and think, hey, this is complete rubbish. Like, Manchester United were terrible in this position. There are plenty of positions they can improve in. But I just don't see the point in just sitting there and just slagging people off. So let me know, what do you guys think in the comments below? I will chat to you in a little while. I hope that you're engaged by these kind of videos where we're trying to be a little bit more balanced about the players, evaluating what's actually going on within the team and not just going, they're terrible, they drew 2-2. United. Yeah. Let me know in the comments below. I'll chat to you guys in a little while. Much love.